thank you for joining me for another drawing project. This project is going to take us way back in time, but we're going to start out very close to home. We're going to begin with one small dot up here in the corner, as I often do. The most important mark we make, it says we're going to do something, and it starts right here. From this point, I'd like you to draw a line that runs parallel to the edge of the page, coming down about to there, not quite halfway down. This is going to be our introduction to the story. We'll be drawing a picture within a picture, and this one is going to be here and now. It's going to be a picture of perhaps your desk or a table in your house. There's going to be something special on it that's going to be our clue as to what the story, the big picture, is all about. I'm going to come down here till it's about even and over. You notice my rectangle shape is not perfect. It's not even exactly. If I was going to get frustrated with it, I'd have to start all over again. So I'm going to take it like it is. And I'm going to draw a line across here like that. And you'll see how all these things kind of blend in together as time goes on. Our story is going to be about a boat. And this boat has a shape that looks like this, a letter C, and a slightly larger letter C up here on this side. And this letter C has a shape that connects it that looks like a smile curve coming up. So it looks kind of like the shape of a canoe. And we're just going to draw a line that comes across the bottom here to show that we have a shape that looks like a canoe that's kind of floating in the air. Actually, it's a model of a canoe, and it has little blocks here holding it up so that it's on display. It's not really a canoe. Actually, it takes us way far back and way far away as well. We're going to draw a curvy little line up above here. And then on this end here, we're going to draw a line that comes up like this and then over, and a line that sweeps up here around, and it becomes like the head of a dragon. What we're drawing is a Viking ship. And we're drawing a model of a Viking ship. It's going to be a very simple model, something you might whittle out of a piece of wood or make out of cardboard. It has a sail that looks like a square. It's located right about here. The exciting thing about making models when we're kids is how our imagination works and takes us from that little plastic model or that wooden model and gets us thinking about what it would really be like to be on a Viking ship, or back in that time, what it would be like to sail on a dragon ship across the North Atlantic Ocean. I'm going to add a small flag up here, a little pennant flying. And that's where we're going to leave this portion of our picture, just a simple start. We'll come back to this towards the end of our drawing. What I'm going to do next is start right about here, down a little bit, and we'll draw a wiggly border that comes across to make it look like we are going back in time. I'm going to come across to right about there and then down this way. I'm going to bring this all the way down. And some of your breaks between these wiggles can be larger, some smaller. And we're just making it look old. I'd like you to stop right about here. You notice how we step down a little bit at the top, so it's a little below that frame. We're going to stop inside of that frame a little bit so that they stand out as two separate borders. So it's a picture within a picture, but kind of offset a bit. Now I'd like you to use your imagination and tear and fray and tatter this old piece of animal skin, maybe a piece of parchment, a piece of old frayed cloth, something that a tapestry might have been woven of, perhaps, or a very detailed drawing painted or painting done on it. And so you end up with this interesting shape that'll take us further back away from the model and into the real world of the dragon ships and the Vikings. I'm going to now draw a line that puts a fancy border along this edge by just wiggling it, kind of like the line above or the line alongside here. We're running another parallel line. It's not a straight parallel line. It's just a wiggly one that looks kind of like that outside edge. And I'll bring it along here as well. Usually you wait until after the artwork is done before you put it in a frame, but we're kind of jumping the gun here a little bit and doing it ahead of time. There we go, like that. And that brings us to the main picture of our story. We're going to be recreating this model, but we're going to do it in a three-dimensional way. We're going to make it look very active and three-dimensional, and like the ship is coming right towards us as we're drawing. I'm going to start with a line that begins right here. This will be that letter C shape at the end. It's going to come down like this. And from right here, I'm going to draw a line that curves down along like this, and it's going to come up, sweeping up and up and up and up like that until it gets to right about here. By raising it up, it lets us see that it's coming closer to us, and it looks shorter back there and larger up here. If you curve this up even more like this, it takes on the shape of this long neck here of the head of the dragon ship rising up. And then I'm just going to draw a couple bumps up here and think of the shape of a dragon's head that would be carved in many different ways, depending on the ship builder and the ship itself and its purpose. Sometimes they had nothing but a little curly-Q scroll up here. If you'd rather do that, just go around and around like that and then come down. We're going to get this. Let me put a mouth on this dragon here like that. And then I'm going to draw a line that copies this one. It's going to come down and around till it comes down to about right here. Now notice I'm coming way down lower than this one here. Leaving it higher up makes it look further away. To show a little bit of the other side of this dragon ship, I'm going to draw a line curving out here and a line coming down like this, and it's going to curve in. These ships were very sleek and fast. They were also lightweight. They could be sailed right up onto the beaches or rowed onto the beaches, and they had both oars and sails to move them. And they came in many different shapes and sizes. I'm going to start right here with a line that is going to come up to about right here like this, and a line that's going to start right about here and coming up to this forward end here. And then I'm going to sweep it up in this area here to make it look like it's part of the ornamental trim, and also the stem of the boat coming down like this. To draw this railing here on the other side, just draw a little curve like that to make it look like it's going a little further away and bump it out a little bit. The ship was designed to carry many people, and a lot of them had shields like this. I'm going to draw a circle here like this. It's actually kind of an oval shape. And then I'm going to draw a little curve back here. Now remember, things closer are going to be larger. They're going to get smaller as they go further away. So maybe what we could do is just draw a bunch of dots like this. And then I'd like you to show how they overlap each other. Now they don't always overlap. Sometimes they were arranged one in front of the other, and if you just come along here like this, you can show many of them all in a row. Make it look like this boat is really long and is going further and further back into the distance. To make it look more interesting, we're going to add a wave that breaks up here like this, and another one that splashes off to the side over there, however you want to do it, and another wave that sweeps up here and off to the side, and another one back here that comes up and catches the tail end of the boat, maybe bursts out a little bit there and comes over like that. So you see we're building these waves that the ship is moving through, and if you carry this line back invisibly behind the boat and bring it out here, it's kind of balanced out a bit. To loosen up a little bit, what I'd like to do is come down to this area below, and we're going to start in this trough right here and just draw some lines here like this. We've been using just outline drawing so far, but now what I'd like to use is these contour shading lines, or hatching, where we're following the shape of the waves and we're drawing lines that reinforce that shape, and we're making the water look a little more believable, making it darker in there, maybe a little darker down in here like this, and then before we do the rest up here, I think I want to just make a random line here like this to show the surface waves, and then give us a little glimpse of what's underneath the water here. So now I come down in this area, I'm going to add some lines sweeping up, and it's lines sweeping up in here like this, and just keep going over and over. And just, by adding these lines, it makes it look like the motion of the water is pushing along, and the wind is blowing, and it's a brisk sea, and And you can almost feel the spray on your face as you draw this picture from that saltwater ocean as it's erupting around you like this. So just go ahead and draw these lines going this way and that. And I'm going to leave this open down here until later. We'll see. We may just continue this later, but I'll give you some other options on that when we get to it. This boat has planks that come up into this area, but sometimes up in this part here, designs are made, and you can draw a wiggly-looking letter S shape here. And divide this into smaller design elements like these. And imagine this all being carved with wood, and these might be just pictorial designs, or perhaps they're animals within an arrangement of curvy lines like layers of knot or rope. The planks of this boat start out very fine there like that, and they come down like this, and as they get down this way they widen out a bit. Same thing here. It's going to come down, it's going to widen out a bit in the middle. Same thing here. And they get wider and wider as they come down, and they get widest most as it's closest to us here. And then they start getting skinnier again here. So I'm drawing, again, I'm just copying the basic shape. I started with this shape and I sort of fanned it out there. Now the tricky part is carrying these lines through behind here and continuing them back in this direction. So I'm going to do this. These are going to be much smaller lines coming back, curving up, because they're further away. So I'm just going to draw these. And it just adds some detail, adds a texture that's different than the texture of the water, which makes it stand out a little bit better. And then continue through here and try to line them up with these other planks here coming along like this. And like this one here. Just kind of bring them in there. I'm going to darken this in a little bit, little shadows under the shields. And I'm going to add some shading in here, some shading down in here and here, just by copying those lines and bringing them up so it makes the water stand out more bright in front of the boat. And we can come back into these areas and add more details later on as we go. On this side here, we've got lines that are going to curve around this way and just sort of spread them around like that. The head of this dragon has an eye right about here, a nose right about there. I have an ear or a horn over here. And you can make up whatever shapes you want in this area. Everybody had their own idea of what this should look like. If you want to put teeth on it, you can. A lot of these were quite ferocious looking. And some of them were just beautiful. They could be birds or whatever other idea the boat builder had in mind. Each one of these shields has a small protrusion in the center here sticking out. This is called a boss, and this is used to deflect the swords of their enemies as they're in battle. And they're just it's made out of metal, and it's attached to wooden shields that are made out of planks. They're attached to a simple framework on the back, and they're all pretty much standard sizes, which made them easy to hang on the sides of the boats and relatively easy to build because they were all similar. They could production build them and have them in quantity as they needed them. Our boat has a sail that's going to look like this. It's going to start with a rainbow-like curve coming over here, and a line that bows out to the forward direction here of the boat. And then another one that pushes in from this side. It's actually parallel to the one on the other side, but it's going to push in. So you can see the wind driving the sail forward, and the sail in turn is pushing the boat through the water. Start down here at the bottom of the sail and lift up like this and over. And when you get to right about here, you might see just a little bit of this portion of the other side where it wraps around like that and tucks around. The sail is held up by a stick. In fact, to your model here, we have this little area here. You can draw two lines sticking out there. There's the stick. This is called the yard arm. And the yard arm is attached to the mast. The mast is a long pole, a tall pole here that comes down from right about here, and it's going to disappear behind the sail and just bring it down like that. I'm moving right along on this drawing. If you find yourself running behind a bit, just pause the film and catch up and start over again or start again, and it'll be maybe make it a little easier if I'm going too fast for you. Some of you may be way ahead of me, so I'm going to take this curve now as my guideline for a series of curves. They come around in a parallel way. The sail is flapping and rippling, and it's going to have strips of cloth. Now, the Vikings had a couple different ways of making their sails. Sometimes they used linen cloth, and sometimes, more often, living up in the reaches of Scandinavia where growing was difficult, they could raise their sheep, and so they had an abundance of wool, and they would make their sails out of wool. The woolen sails had a pattern more like this. I'll draw this back in the model here. I just draw them like that and crisscross like this. And they use strips of leather to secure or to strengthen the sail. On this sail here, we've used stripes of cloth, and they very often would dye their sails kind of a blood red color, a rusty red color. And in the case of the linen cloths, they could alternate them sometimes, and we'll do that here. We're going to again use our contour lines, our contour hatching or shading lines that come up here like this. Skip this one here and go to the next one, and then just keep going over and over until you get to the other side, putting darkness here and like that. And then you can put a few lines here to show that there's a shadow at the bottom of the sail on the white portion as well. And then all across here, I'd like you to draw some dots coming across just to show that there are reinforcements that are stitched into this. And they would add extra little ropes from these that would allow them to shorten the sail or to tie or bunch the sail up. And you have these coming along like this. To hold the sail up, there's a ring right about here on the mast. And using sheaves, blocks of wood with holes in them, you have these lifts, they're called, that hoist the sail up and hold it in place. And you can draw those like that. And to keep the mast from falling down, they have coming from that same ring here, you have a line that comes down here. It comes all the way down and attaches at the forward stem of the boat here. And it comes down behind. It'll come back this way and come down into this section of the stern or the back end of the boat. And to keep it from falling down sideways, you have a line coming down behind here that is called a shroud, and you have maybe another one. Depending on the size of the boat, the size of the sail, they might have 1, 2, or 3 of these lines. They could have as many as they felt they needed. And so I'm going to put 2 on each side. I'm going to darken in the mast so it doesn't look like a shroud, like that. In front of the mast, there's a structure that sticks up like this, and it's part of what's called the tabernacle. And then you have these posts sticking up here that are shaped like letter T's. There's one here and there's one back here like this. I'll get to that in a minute, explaining that. Right about here, just to put some life into our picture, I'd like you to draw a shape that looks kind of like a letter O, and then a wiggly line here and another one coming out here, and just draw a shape that looks kind of like a person. And then darken him in a little bit, put a shadow on the left side like that, and maybe he's getting ready to haul a rope in or something like that, and then put another guy here. Notice the size of these people. This gives us a chance to understand the size of the boat itself. Some of these boats could reach 90 feet or so, and many of them were much smaller than that. I'd like you to continue this back in here. Have another person here. They might be sitting on benches. They had their sea chests that they carried their belongings in that were also the seat that they sat on when they were rowing the boats. Right now they're sailing along. They don't need the oars. If they were using the oars, they'd be passed through these holes along the side, and these would go all the way along, all the way back. and depending on how many people were there. And then back in here you have this structure coming down on the side, and you have a guy, and make him look small back here because he's far away. We'll make this the helmsman, and he's operating the steerboard back aft here. And that's how they steer it. They have a paddle that they push this back and forth, change the angle of the paddle to the water, and it'll either head the boat up into the wind or fall off and away from the wind. These boats were very fast. As long as they had wind behind them, they could fly the sails and they could go anywhere they wanted to. But when the wind died, or when they were sailing in calm seas or up in rivers, as they often did, not sailing, they would end up rowing instead. To make this look a little more real, I'm going to curve around this little line at the back end of the stern of the boat. I'm going to come down. I'm going to bring it back this way so we see into the boat a little bit at the back end of the stern. I'm going to darken that in a bit around this guy. At the top of the mast, if you come up a little bit higher to right about there, you can draw a banner that flies like this. And if you twist a line back and forth like this, it creates a flag that is fluttering in the wind. Notice the wind is blowing in the direction the boat is moving, and which is pushing the sail in that direction as well. Sometimes it would fly little banners like these, or little flags off the end of the yard arms to make it look even fancier. Back in this area here, I'm going to draw a line that comes down. It's going to come right over here and drop down about there. In the distance, in the fleet that we're drawing here now, we've got another boat that's a little different from the Viking ship we're accustomed to. It comes up here on the bow, the front end, and curves down. There's a wave splashing here. I'm putting it a little further away from this boat. This one is called a nar, and we're just going to see the simple shape of it. It doesn't have shields along the sides. It has planks, broad planks, and comes up. It's very similar to the construction of this, and it has a sail here coming over, and you'll see a part of it there, the yard arm here, and a line coming across here to hold it up. And you can just darken this sail, and maybe this is one of those dark red sails. And you can draw some people on this boat. Now see, they're further away, so a little bit smaller there. I'm going to darken in the bottom portion of the boat, the hull here, and make that wave stand out a little bit brighter. And perhaps further off here in the distance, there's another ship sailing, and it has a Viking head on it as well. And it has waves crashing up in here. And it has a little sail sticking up here like this, and over. It's far enough away that we may still see some of the shields, but it's going to be off in the distance. So I'm going to draw some lines like these and just sort of take it further away by making it look more like a shadow on that water far away. And I'll draw some waves now coming up in here to help set it further into the distance. They would often travel with a fleet of ships if they were heading for lands that they wanted to conquer, or to places they wanted to trade with. And they were very exciting people with an amazing history, fascinating to learn about. And if you build one of these little models sometime, you're going to want to know a lot more about them for sure. On this land back here, I'm going to just draw some lines that look kind of like trees, just sticks coming up. And these could be large trees, but a lot of this land is very rocky and cold and barren. But just to make a little contrast with that lighter area, and if you want, you can draw some lines that sort of come down here and suggest the tall raised cliffs of the fjords, the high raised lands that surrounded the waterways that they would sail into, and around which or upon which they built their homes. I'm going to carry this line here back and carry it out like this. In the background, we have some clouds flying, and these clouds are going to take on a shape. I'm going to draw lines like this coming out, and lines like this billowing up in the distance. and around, make these big cumulus clouds, and another one here flying up into the air. And maybe some more land farther off in the distance here. They're going from one place to another. If you raise this line up a little higher, put it right about there, you can see this land off in the distance. There might be some lodges or shelters, houses back on the ridge. Maybe they're waiting for their fleet to come back in or waving them off. To add to the drama of the picture, I'd like you to come up here and draw some lines that push the clouds through the sky. I'm just drawing them with lines that are moving in the direction the boat is moving in the direction the flag is moving, and just going to take that in. And what that does is help pull our eye down into these cloudy forms, and you can add some more in here if you want, or some more up in here. Think of the sky, maybe the brighter part of the sky over here, a little darker back in this cloudy area. In fact, maybe I'll do that. I might just set that little box in the corner back by adding a few extra wind-looking lines here, kind of coming up and lead us in that direction. All around here you'll have birds flying, seagulls and different water birds the closer we get to land. So draw a few of those in there just to add some sound to your drawing. Imagine the call of the seagulls in the distance. And if you add a few lines like these underneath the clouds, you can show how there's a shadow from the sunlight, which is shining in this direction towards the top of the sails and the front of the ship. It's casting a shadow on the bottom of the clouds as well. Down in here, there are a couple options we have. We could either draw sea monsters down there, or you can add more waves to it, or you could write a title to this drawing down below. I'm going to leave that to you. My preference at this point, well, I'm going to go ahead and draw sea monsters. I'm just going to draw a bunch of strange shapes down here. And this is where I just kind of make stuff up, and sometimes they look very real and scary, sometimes they're kind of goofy looking, but I just draw scribbly shapes that kind of force my mind into thinking creatively, how do I turn these odd looking silly things into something that might look like a sea monster. So I start adding details. I start adding scales like these. Maybe it's just a fish. Maybe it's a fish with jaggedy teeth, or maybe this one here has Google eyes that go in all directions and spiky fins, and maybe this one here is just a smiley fish with a funny eye and flippy fin. And I'm just going to do this down here because very often tapestries in days of old were done like that. And then I'm going to come along and just darken this in, and maybe leave a little bit of light along the top edge of this shape just to set it back a little bit and make it look a little more wet and watery looking. And plus also this weight down here, this darkness down here kind of anchors our picture, makes it more believable. We tend to see things with greater detail and clarity as they're close to us, and they get a little more vague and distant as they go off into the air. I'd like to come back to this little model that started this adventure. And what I'd like to do is have you imagine having made that model a long time ago. And I'd like you to draw your head right here up above the model. Just an oval shape, an egg shape. And I'd like you to draw your eyes. You're looking down at the model. You're proud of what you did. You created this thing, and you learned a whole lot about Vikings and their culture. And so draw your eyes kind of curving, your eyelids curving down, and your mouth there, and your neck here like this. And I'd like you to draw your shoulders coming down. And I'd like you to wear your hair like you usually wear your hair, however you would like to wear your hair. Maybe you got long hair like that, or maybe short hair. And then dress the way you would like to dress. Maybe you got a t-shirt on here, and it's got sleeves here, and you just got done building this model. You've been working on it forever. I remember my first Viking ship that I made with a Revell model kit, a plastic model, and I painted all the details and had everything looking as beautiful as I could. What I'd like you to do now is imagine finishing that model off a little bit more realistically by looking at the details that you created here in this more three-dimensional version. Think of the shields lining the side of the hull. You can draw them in a different way. You could draw them independently of each other rather than overlapping, coming around here, which they often did. And you could draw the lines for the hull coming up here, showing the shading at the bottom. You could draw the ropes, the lines that would hold the sail up here. The more realistic the model was, the more believable the story in your mind, in your imagination. I found that by building the models and by reading the instructions and learning the names of the parts of the boat that I was building, I actually became a better sailor. I was able to sail on boats. I've never sailed on a Viking ship. I would love to someday. There are a lot of reproductions or new versions of Viking ships that are sailing the Atlantic and have proven that the Vikings could easily sail to North America way back in the 800s and 800s, 900s, 1000s AD, a long time ago. Right here is a great place for your name to go. So I'd like you to sign your drawing right here on that little piece of border there. My name is Tom Woodruff. UFF. And it's a good place for your name to go on yours. And again, down below on this border here, this may be a place where you could write a title for the story. One thing I do want to add to this is, at least over on this side here, I'm going to write the date. Now I'm going to write the date that I'm doing this, but I would like on your drawing the date that you do it, to just find out what day it is, because I find it's always good to remember these things. 5 for May, and I'm going to write the 7th of May, and this is 2020. When I look at this, I can look back and say, wow, I did that a long time ago, and if I've drawn many more of them, I can actually see a progression. I can see how I get better each time I do it. And or I see maybe I tried something differently in another one that I haven't used in a long time, and maybe that would be even better if I brought it up to my new skill level, because every time we try something new or retry something old, we get a little better at what we do. I want to thank you very much for drawing with me. I hope you had fun with this, and if you get a chance to take a picture of it and share it with me, I'd love to see it. Thank you very much. Have a great day.